Welcome to Bethelians. This is Rabbi Daniel Graber, and this is a podcast to help our Bethel community get to know one another. Today, I am very happy to have two good friends. They're good friends of each other, and I feel blessed to have them as good friends. We have Dr. Professor Bob Lefkowitz, who just, for Bethel trivia, is our Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. And Doctor and professor and former chancellor of the Duke Medical System, Ralph Snyderman. And I think I just want to say at the outset, you both have long professional biographies. I'm not going to go over any of those, okay? And there are lots of places on the internet and in other places where you've talked about your professional careers and achievements that are many. But today we're going to focus on your Bethel stories and your Jewish stories. And I would love to just begin by asking each of you, let's say 3 to 4 minutes each, right? Tell me your Bethel story. How in the world did you get to Bethel Synagogue in Durham, North Carolina?
Well, I came to Duke on the faculty a year before Bob. So it was probably in April or May of 1972. We had just moved here from the National Institutes of Health and lived in Durham, place on Princeton Avenue. And we had a visitor, and the visitor was Gladys Siegel. We had been
blessed
here,
memory.
a blessed memory.
And I should say we're recording this podcast on Tuesday, the weekend after the unveiling of Gladys. Passed away.
Precious human being.
Amen.
Anyway, Gladys came. We had barely been here 3 months or so, and said that we ought to consider joining Bethel Synagogue. So that was my first contact with Bethel. And it's hard to think of a better contact than Gladys.
And this was 53 years ago.
Come on, are you kidding me?
No, I'm kidding. Serious. 53 years ago, and you don't say no to Gladys, right? You don't say no to Gladys, right?
No way. But there was an interlude because it isn't something that I resonated to right away, and wanting to come to shul all the time. Wasn't a big part of my background, although I grew up in a very Jewish environment. But when my son Ted was approaching his bar mitzvah, obviously we needed to get much more involved.
By the way, Ted now, right, is one of the heads of our Hever Kadisha. So how does I don't mean to shortcut the punch. No, he succeeded in the bar mitzvah, and now, anyways, go ahead.
Where he got that, I don't know. I'm amazed, and I'm so proud of him. I really am. But I want to leave a little bit of time for Bob. He doesn't need much, but I'll give him a little bit of time in this podcast. But so we probably for 2 years before his bar mitzvah, we went to Shabbat services all the time, and I really did love it. I embraced it. Everything about it was good. At the time, I just need to say one thing. At the time of Teddy's bar mitzvah, about 6 weeks before his bar mitzvah, I thought everything was going just fine. I get a call from Steve Sager.
Alav Hashalom, a blessed memory.
Another blessed memory. And he said, Teddy may be fooling your family. He may be fooling you, but he's not fooling me. This kid is not ready for his bar mitzvah.
The phone call that every rabbi wants to make. Right?
I mean,
what every father wants to get.
I looked at this beautiful little child that I thought was learning so much and davening, and in no way was he ready. So there was an intense boot camp type of endeavor to get him through. And I'll just never forget, my parents who survived the pogroms and sitting in the front row of his bar mitzvah, and him doing all the things he needed to do. Then afterwards, what Steve would do is have a little session up there on the bima. A conversation, and asked him the interpretation of his parsha, which was one of these very tedious things about the arrangement of the tabernacles and the tents and the order of this. In many ways, it couldn't have been more dull, in a sense. And he asked Teddy to interpret that. And here's this little kid starts talking, well, it makes me think of the organization of the cell. You have mitochondria and you have Golgi body and you have these things, and they all come together. Each one is independent, but they're all related and they all function together to create this living cell. And I'm thinking, where in
Where
the
did he get
world
this
did
from?
this kid get it from?
Right.
I mean, it was like,
Now he's speaking your language, right?
But at any rate, that is what indelibly linked me to Bethel. It was
Mm.
it was one of the greatest gifts that could ever be given to my mother, my father,
Mm.
me, at that time Judith, and to Teddy.
Amazing.
And it really is, even though it would have been hard to predict, linear between him at that time and being so much involved with the Chevra Kadisha.
Amazing. And you have had the zechut, the merit, to also have a granddaughter who had a bat mitzvah.
That's right. That's right.
Bethel.
Ariella, she had a wonderful,
And-
and now I have Michaela,
And Michaela
who's
is
coming up in about 3-4
Look it up.
months, and we're all.
and just for any of our young parents listening to I don't know that the B'nai Mitzvah class is going to be listening to our podcast, but the parents who are out there, if you feel like your children, if you get one of those phone calls from Rabbi Graber, right, don't lose hope, right? It's okay.
And I hope I didn't embarrass Teddy from this, but he certainly overcame that, and he did a beautiful job.
Yeah. All right, Bob, how do you tell your Bethel story?
Well, so we arrived, I guess, a year after Ralph in 73. I moved with my family. That was my first wife, Orna. And at the time, we had 4 children. We would subsequently have a 5th here. We moved down from Boston, where I was finishing my training at the Mass General Hospital in cardiology. I don't recall, we were a pretty observant, conservative Jewish family. We always had a strictly kosher home, observed the rituals, etc. And this was a conservative shul, and so we joined up immediately. The kids, when we moved, ranged in age from 1 to 9, and there were 4 of them, so they're obviously close together. All of them, like Teddy, would go through the bar mitzvah classes, and ultimately all 5 of my kids had their b'nai mitzvah here. Arna was very active in sisterhood, etc., and was really more the driving force. I was so busy with my career and this and that. But somehow I was talked in the 70s, I was talked into joining the board of Bethel, which I served on for several years, rising to, at that time, I don't know how it is these days, and you had a president, a first vice president, a second vice president, and other things. I rose to first vice president and was clearly on the track to be the president. But the real reason was that I withdrew. Was that I was just so busy. I knew I could not shoulder that responsibility. But I remember everybody on the board was asking me, why are you doing this? Why are you declining to become president? And so what I told them at the time was, there's so much infighting and arguing on this board that I fear I'm becoming anti-Semitic. Okay. And I don't want to be an anti-Semite. I'm Jewish, I said. And so the only way to protect myself is to withdraw. So I have that memory.
I will say on behalf of our board now, there's no infighting. We do a great job, civil conversations, but sounds like quite a story.
Infighting.
Okay.
There were older people and younger people, and whatever came up, the older people would always say, "Oh yeah, we faced this 20 years ago, and this is how we do it," et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So that was one story about the board. The other thing I remember is I came. Do you remember what year or know what year Steve Sager became rabbi?
I believe I know it was the late 70s.
Yeah, that sounds right. So the first few years we were here, there was a Rabbi Berger. Yeah. He was not very popular, and ultimately his contract was not renewed, and that's how we wound up looking for Steve Sager. I was on that search committee. But one thing I remember about Rabbi Berger is that when he spoke from the bimah, an effusion of sputum would come out of his mouth. It was just one of these guys, it was a lot of liquid. And
by the way, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you can watch a video and you can see Bob's arms go spreading out right as he says that.
So this, for me personally, was my kids were horrified by this. And my wife, Arna, always liked to sit in the first or second row. The kids refused to do it because they claimed it was sort of like when you go down to Orlando, with the whales and the water, you don't want to get too close. And they ultimately refused to sit closer than about row 3 or row 4. So that's another memory I have.
Right.
And in the 80s, the only main memory I have is by then Ralph and I were good buddies and running buddies. And so we would.
How did the two of you meet? Did you meet at Duke?
Yeah.
We met at Duke.
But you just ended up going to shul together.
Well, our labs were on the same
It's an evolution.
floor. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we had kids at bar mitzvah age.
And you were running buddies. You
Yeah.
ran
So
together.
we would come on a Sunday morning, drop the kids off for school, Sunday school, and then we'd go out for whatever time permitted.
And was Michelle Pass the director of the school at that point?
No recollection.
Okay.
That was above my
I know
pay
Michelle
grade.
would.
That was
Okay.
above my pay grade. I
Okay.
mean, my wife handled it.
So you dropped off. You went for a run.
Went for a run.
Okay.
Came back, picked them up. So those are my recollections of my early days
Okay.
at Bethel.
I actually recall Bob mentions running together. Almost specifically, although I don't remember exactly where it was, when you indicated that they had identified a new rabbi, Rabbi Graber. And I just remember it vividly when talking about it on a run.
Yeah, I have this recollection when they moved here, they flew down. As I recall, maybe it was a visit, but Sibby was extraordinarily pregnant, I guess, with Ariel.
Wait, you remember running when they identified Rabbi Sager or when they identified me?
That's a good question.
About what, 78?
We started, let's go back to the evolution of our friendship, which is, I think, I don't know, it's unique for me, that's for sure. So I came on the faculty in 1972, and I was recruited by the chairman of medicine, Jim Weingarten, a real legend in medicine. And we had a brand new research building, the Sands building, and I had this beautiful laboratory in the Sands building. And then lo and behold, months afterwards, the rest of the labs on the other all got filled out, and Bob Lefkowitz had his laboratory there. Anyway, you can't help but start talking to each other, which we did, probably starting in 73, 74. And, we had a good friendship, but Bob is the most intense person that I know in the world. And once he gets a hold of something, he doesn't give up. And I was always committed to having some physical activity. And every Christmas, when I ate too much and everything, I'd run until I got sick, and then I wouldn't run again until the following year. But Bob was a noted long distance runner. So ultimately, we started running together. He convinced me that I should start running. I ended up buying a very expensive pair of running shoes. And once I had that investment, Bob will, I'm sure, could elaborate on this.
He puts money into something.
Once I did not take, I wore these shoes every day. I had about 1,000 miles on those e-tonics. But so we started.
You were going to get your money's worth.
I was going to get my
That's
money's
what Bob
worth.
is saying.
Exactly.
Right.
So at any rate, what really solidified our relationship, other than that mysterious kind of bonding that happens amongst people, is that we would spend probably an hour, and sometimes on a weekend, 2 hours, just Bob and me, just running.
Just running.
Just running and talking.
So for our podcast, I want to go back to, I think an important formative. You both grew up in New York. There's some Jews in New York.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about, the different boroughs, because I know you went different boroughs, different high schools, and how did you find that out, and how did that mesh with Jewish life in Durham?
Well, what I would say when you say that we both grew up in New York, and implying that there is an intense similarity, would be like, you grew up in the research triangle, and whether you went to Duke or UNC, it was essentially the same thing. Not at all. So I grew up in Brooklyn, which was hard, gritty, tough. Everybody had to earn every day to survive that day. I mean, it was a battle.
I'll also
He grew
say,
up,
but Ralph was a kettle man in a bagel place,
yeah,
and we did a field trip a number of years ago
exactly.
to
I love it with your mother.
Brandywine Bagels with
And
my
I
mom.
and I
Yes,
actually the two of us helped boil the bagels, get
right.
it out of the kettle, and then they put it on the boards and they bake it. So at the age of 12, I was a
So
kettleman.
you were working the kettle,
But
hard
Brooklyn,
nose. Yeah,
Brooklyn
Brooklyn.
is a gritty, tough neighborhood. The Bronx is
Bob.
I would say it's a feat. It's a feat. I mean, these people have it so easy compared to Brooklyn. I mean, they have these beautiful boulevards, the Grand Concourse with trees on both sides. Honestly, I did not have a tree on the block
They say
where
a
I
tree
grew up.
grows in
There
Brooklyn,
was
but it's
no
not true.
tree. There was no tree on my block.
Would you like to defend yourself?
Well,
And
I
then
don't know about
yeah.
the feet.
The feet, yes.
There's nothing wrong with our feet, but it is true that the Bronx and Brooklyn were like two continents. They were that far apart. In fact, my family had one small cluster of relatives in Brooklyn. We would see them once a year. Okay. We would make a visit there. I remember cousin Julius and his son Billy, and the mother was Miriam. But to get there,
And sorry,
yeah,
I just remember from some of our other conversations, these were these societies, is that right?
well, yeah, that was the other
Just
side of the family.
oh, okay,
That's the
okay,
whole story.
right,
This is my mother's side,
okay.
and to get to Brooklyn, though, we had to basically take two or three
Oh,
subway
yeah,
trains.
it
It was
took 2 hours.
so I remember I was a little kid. We'd go down to the station. We'd get on the train. We would take it through tunnels. We would change a couple of times. And, it seemed like days later, we would emerge into the sunlight. And my reaction is the opposite. There were trees there,
Trees
just like
were
in the book, somewhere in Brooklyn. And
Not for Ralph, not in his part of
his
Brooklyn.
part
I
of
never
it. And
found
then we
it.
would visit for an hour or two, and then we would go back. But and it was like a different world because, I mean, we might as well be going to Asia. I mean, it was that long a trip. But we were both Yankees fans, which is surprising because the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Right.
But he
Yeah,
was always kind of,
yeah, it was an
contrarian.
outlier, right.
And how did Jewish life, here at Bethel in Durham, North Carolina, how was that different? And how was it, did it
Yeah, well,
carry forward
so
anything from
my shul where I was bar mitzvahed was Young Israel of Parkchester. It was a strictly Orthodox shul. Okay. Women, sat upstairs, in a separate section, and it was just really strict. Everything was in Hebrew, which made it totally, nothing that you could relate to. My most significant memory is during high holidays, which would almost invariably correspond to the World Series. And so we would sneak outside with a little portable radio group of kids, and there was an alley next to the shul, and we would be listening to the game. And the shamus, or I don't know, some guy would come out, and he'd say, "Get back inside," and he would slap
this was
his hand.
before cell phones, right?
Yeah,
They would bring
right.
a radio, right?
Exactly.
Before
So
television.
I remember that. The only positive thing was it was a very big shul, was that on a typical weekend, there were multiple bar mitzvahs. There were three when I got bar mitzvah, which meant you only had to do a third of the Haftorah, which meant less studying, which was great. That was the only positive recollection I have of the shul.
Well, I think that this is an important point that Bob, we hadn't discussed this, but shares with me. I said my parents were they fled the pogroms. They were not. My mother's father was a larer. He wasn't actually a rabbi, but he taught Yiddish and Hebrew to other children in the shtetl. My father lived outside of the shtetl, was more of a horseman, more of a kind of a he-man kind of guy. They would transport things for the Graf. But at any rate, when they came here, they joined a conservative temple, which was, really more orthodox than conservative. But unlike Bethel, children were not particularly welcome. Everybody had to have a ticket. There was no really easy place for younger people to be there. And everybody was mean to us. I mean, I never understood a word of what was going on. And it seemed that the only expressions I ever saw from other people were scowls. So, because of that, we used to, unlike you, we would hang out outside
Right.
and be outside as much as we could. But this put me off, I think, to become really as involved as I subsequently became with Bethel because of how it treated young children. Children are so welcome here. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to see with Ted and my grandchildren how comfortable they feel.
And to everybody who's listening, again, the rabbi will just say, I say this sometimes from the Bima, it is a wonderful thing. We never want to be a shul where we don't hear the sound of children in the sanctuary.
Well,
right? It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Another clear memory I'm having of my times there at Young Israel Parkchester was, going to Hebrew school and Sunday school. And I remember the teacher, Mrs. Glauberger, was very strict. Okay. And so basically, if you were not prepared, it reminds me of The Chosen, the Potok novel. Only we weren't preparing, of course, readings from the Mishnah. We were just preparing whatever little piece of Pirkei Avot or whatever we were supposed to read. And she'd call on somebody to read it and give some interpretation. If you were unprepared or she didn't like what you were saying, she'd come and give you that right on the ear.
Oy.
Yeah.
Oy, 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 oy.
So we took to wearing these hats, with the big things. And if she was coming for you, you would pull it down and snap it together to protect your ears.
I can give you assurance that our Talmud Torah teachers do not lick the ears of their student. So I want to finish up with two more quick topics. Okay. Quick in quotation marks. Number one, so tell me about the most meaningful either moment or aspect of Jewish life at Bethel for each one of you. It might, is there a particular, just something where for you it continues to feed your connection with God, with the Jewish people? What do you think about when I ask
Well, with me, there's the one particular episode which was really a crystallization seed of getting me much more involved with Bethel. But the other is really a continuum. But the crystallization was my mother and my father sitting in the front row at Teddy's bar mitzvah and seeing their grandchild having his bar mitzvah and then having the conversation with Rabbi Sager is something that I will never forget. The other thing, it's a little bit amusing. Bob will remember this because it reminds me from time to time.
Talk about it.
So Steve was in the middle of his sermon. My father at that time was in his 80s. It seemed like an old man, although now it doesn't seem old at all. But at that time, so he's sitting in the front row, and he had to go to the bathroom. So Steve is, he's really getting into it. My father's like right in front of him. He gets up, and he used to wear this overcoat. He had this kind of winter overcoat that he wore all the time in the house. I don't know why he never took that thing off. He gets up, goes to the left, and then another left, and he's walking down the hall. And Steve is nonplussed. And as my father's walking down the hall, people are looking. He says, when you're his age, you could do anything you want. And I never forgot that. I thought that was one of the sweetest, dearest things that I ever heard. But to me,
and the other thing was, I remember it vividly as well, and we've talked about it. Moish, his father, took no note of Steve whatsoever. I mean, he could hear it. He's walking out, and Steve could be saying anything. He don't give a damn. He just walked right out, kept going, didn't as much as look around or anything.
But to me, I really find my experiences very meaningful in terms of the humanistic community relationship. I enjoy, I actually enjoy being here when I'm here.
Yeah.
And, very frankly, I think your personality has a tremendous impact on the community. It certainly has an impact on me and my family. The openness, the embracing, hearing the younger members talk about their summer experiences and their trips to Israel. I think the feeling of being part of a community is new to me. Even though I grew up in a community in Brooklyn and I've been in so many different places, this is a very different thing to be part of a community. And I don't think I've embraced it as much as I hope that I will. But it's a tremendous resource and a part of our life.
Bob, what about
So
you?
for me, it's easy because, as you know, I'm not a big shul goer. I never have been. And so really, except for some very special occasion, the main time that I'm in the shul is on the high holidays.
I will say,
Yeah.
when you won the Nobel Prize,
Absolutely. And that's
that
a
was
very vivid memory of mine for several reasons I can tell you about. But for me, the high holiday services are very meaningful. And I agree with Ralph. One of the things that makes it so meaningful is the way you handle things. And typically, Ralph and I have had a custom now for probably 30 or more years. We're on Yom Kippur afternoon, after the morning and services are over. We meet about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We go for a walk, 3, 4 miles, something like that. And we invariably talk about whatever your sermon was. We always talk about that little meditation you do where you close your eyes and you meet up with people who've passed on. We talk about that every what did you see, who was there, etc. So that's really very meaningful to me, and that service is very meaningful to me.
Will you say just one word about the Siddur that you have at home, the prayer book that
Excuse me?
you have a prayer book at home?
That I made myself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think this is a neat.
Well, yeah, as
Just
I
tell
say,
everybody
it's
about that.
interesting. I consider myself, if you say, are you religious? My answer is yes. If you say, are you spiritual? Very. Are you a shul goer? Not really. But I have my own prayer book, which I've made up over the years. In it are several specific prayers, okay, that I've culled, etc. The Shema I know by heart for some reason in Hebrew and in English. That's sort of if I'm praying, I always start with that. Why? That's the only prayer I really know by heart. Okay, so I figure he's going.
It's a good one. It's a good place
one.
to start.
I like it. Especially the part about you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. If that's sort of hey, are you listening up there? And I'm calling. That's my call. It's like my call sign, if you will. But mostly it's a gratitude book. Okay, so that's how I do, and I do this about 15 minutes every morning. And it's I would say it's 2/3 to 3/4 gratitude. Okay, and then the rest is intentional prayer for things that are on my mind, etc. And then there are several prayers in there, some of which you've given me. I don't know the name of it, but it goes something like this, and then I'll tell you. Well, anyway, I can't remember the wording at this point, but it's the one you say that thanks God for, blessed are you, Lord, our God, King of the universe, who fashioned man with wisdom and created within him many openings and many cavities. It is obvious and known before your throne of glory that if but one of them would be ruptured or one of them would be blocked, it would be impossible to stand before you, to survive and stand before you. Blessed are you, God, who heals all flesh and acts wondrously. How'd I do?
You did great.
Okay, well, I have some issues in the genital urinary area, which are troublesome to me to this day, and which will be right till the end. That prayer is very meaningful to me. You taught it to me,
Yeah.
so I have that one clipped in, and there are several others that along those lines.
I mentioned it. Thank you, and I'm very impressed. He did by heart.
Yeah.
Your mom would be very proud.
Well, it's in the prayer
Right.
book. I read it.
And I just think it's a great thing for people to know that, you can create a prayer book for yourself, right, at home and sort of find what are the pieces and build that routine.
And
for
it's
yourself.
always growing. Yeah, a couple of things I have in there. When you had that lovely ceremony for me here at the shul, it was almost one of the first times you and I were encountered. each other. And you said, this was the first time I'm ever, saying a prayer for a Nobel laureate. It doesn't happen every day. We talk about the fact in Judaism there's a prayer for everything. And you
and I gave you a
prayer for
blessing.
meeting somebody who has deep knowledge. And then you also gave me another one, which I took with me, for meeting royalty, because I was about to meet the king.
You were going to meet the king. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So all right. I'm saving the best for last. Okay. We haven't talked about Yiddish.
Oh my.
Okay. And I feel like we should have a glass of wine for this or something. But the two of you each know Yiddish. Okay.
Abyssal.
We've, maybe talk a little bit about your knowledge of Yiddish, but then what I really want you to do is see if you can take us through. There's a spectrum of words to describe.
I don't know if you want to
terrible people. No. It's a Jewish. It's okay, right? If rated R. Okay, I'm going to say this part of it is rated R. So, just what are some of the light words that you can choose to sort of describe somebody as whatever, and then let's walk through to the worst. Okay.
So you want to. I would say a light one,
like shmagagi.
A nebbish.
Nebbish.
Right, yeah.
Give us, what does a nebbish mean?
A nebbish is somebody who is really can't get things done. They may try hard. They're sweet, but they're not effective in anything that they do. They're lovable, but totally ineffective.
Okay.
So then also,
what comes after nebbish?
So the light end would be shlemiel and shlemazel.
And help us the difference.
Yeah, the key distinction being that a shlemiel spills coffee in a schlemazel's lap. In other words, the shlemiel is the guy who's clumsy, awkward, always screws it up. The shlemazel, it's always raining on him, right? Or raining coffee on him.
Okay.
There's a good distinction there.
So I would say in a progression, I don't know if you'd agree, the next one could be a shmendrik.
Shmendrik or shmegegi? I don't
know. But I would say, yeah, I think it's a toss-up. But a shmendrik has all of those characteristics, but there's a certain unpleasantness with the individual.
Okay.
I mean, that you find it a little bit offensive. With the shmegegi, they screw up, but it's a little bit less offensive than it is,
Shmendrik and shmegegi is a tough one. Very close.
So you would say shmegegi, they screw up, but it's not unlovable. It's not unpleasant. But shmendrik is like,
go like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. Shmendrik.
All right, and I'll say this.
Yeah.
Right. Just to break the ice here a little bit, because the word schmuck,
right.
So is that the next in the continuum, right? I hope everybody's okay hearing the rabbi.
Sure, yeah. I think that it's very dismissive. It's like, he's a schmuck. I don't want to have anything to do. The other thing would be a putz. A putz and a schmuck would be, I don't want to have anything to do with that individual. They're not worth any further conversation.
Okay.
So schmuck is a much more nuanced and versatile term.
Please, Dr. Lefkowitz, go ahead.
So schmuck can mean a whole range of things. It can mean something as simple as a jerk. He's just a schmuck. He's a jerk. Or it can mean something very, very nasty. He's a real bad guy. He's just a schmuck. Okay. But here's the key thing about schmuck. It can actually be used, and this would never be true of putz. It can actually be used in a sympathetic, almost compassionate way. Okay, you have a friend. Okay, he was a good guy. He took to drink. He had affairs. He left his wife. It all fell apart. But he was basically a good guy, and you can't believe this happened to him. You might say, the poor dumb schmuck, look what he did to his life. Okay, I mean, it's not a good thing to say about somebody, but yeah, there's compassion there. You would never say, the poor dumb putz, look what because a putz, let's be frank, he's a prick. Okay. I mean, it is as negative as you can get.
Okay.
Even though literally they both have the same meaning.
Okay. All right. Look, this is the sort of stuff that you can't get anywhere else. Okay. I mean,
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good thing.
Let's thanks be to God for that.
Well, I have truly enjoyed all of my conversations that I've had with the two of you over the years. I appreciate your sharing.
We're finished already.
Yeah, we're finished already.
It's a podcast.
That could be our tagline. You call this a podcast.
We're not even second gear. We're first.
All right, we'll come back and do it again.
All of these
Okay.
lines that we stored up lines.
We want to say
10,
thank
12,
you
13 lines.
thank you for listening to Bethelians. We hope you'll listen again. Our regular services are every morning at Shabbos morning at 9:30, and there's Shabbat childcare for the little ones. It starts at 10 a.m. And if you would like to be featured on our podcast, we invite you to be in touch with Madeline at programs@betheldurham.org. Lee Trodes.
Lahit road.
Lee Trodes.